Getting back to economic development for a second, issue of prioritization has come up with the Headwaters Fund and the way those monies, which were allocated in the first place to help displaced timber workers, are being allocated. Just had Mr. Cleary in here defending his record of creating jobs in the grass-fed beef industry and so forth. Do you feel the Headwaters Fund Board has done a competent job dispensing those monies? Do you think really enough jobs have been created for the amount of time and effort that's gone into that?
Well, I have to admit, I was looking at the sample ballot and looking at the candidates' statements last evening, trying to read through and see what each of the candidates were making their case on. And with Mr. Cleary, you have to remember he's not the only board member. He's one of a few. And with that said, I have concerns with the way that the Headwaters Fund and this Board of Supervisors work together. There doesn't seem to be a clear process for discussions on where money may go, the actions that are taken, and then how the decision has come about for the appropriations of the money. There was an issue with some Headwaters Fund monies going to some letters or something regarding Richardson Grove, and the hearsay was either the Board of Supervisors didn't get a look at it before the money was spent, or vice versa. Something happened, and I'm not sure exactly what happened, but that's not the first time where people have questioned, okay, who discussed where the money was going to go and how did it come about. I'm not fond of the Headwaters Fund being created and then it not going 100% to local entities. As a supervisor, I would have a problem with any outside non-local entity getting any direct or indirect benefits from any monies from the Headwaters Fund. I believe that 100% of those monies should stay local. The debacle with Delta is a good example. Now, there may have been great intentions to try to keep the airlines here, but it seems that often enough supervisors are not envisioning or foreseeing or searing the future in a capacity that is going to end up being accurate. It was a bad decision, and as you see with the economy right now, it's even worse. Another problem with that is that the airport may not be operable. In other words, federal law has come down regarding security measures that mandate certain expenditures to be made, and the director of the airport's not so sure that she's going to be able to find the money for the findings that the feds have made stipulating what is required at airports for security measures. So you could say, well, you know, $1 million, $500,000 from the Headwaters Fund plus another $500,000 that was ponied up by the business community, just right down the drain.
Switching gears to public safety, obviously the county hasn't had the massive layoffs in law enforcement that we've seen elsewhere in the state, but that might not stay that way forever. What do you think of the way public safety resources are being allocated in the county? And the flip side of that is the law enforcement committee that's being established right now, that the board had a very split decision on, 3-2, with current Supervisor Duffy against, to create a system of police review to review those policies, practices, and procedures at the Sheriff's Department. Do you think that was the right decision? And how do you feel those resources go hand in hand or not with some sense of accountability?
Well, number one, I'm always for police review. I believe there should be a review process for any public agency, number one. And the conducts that individuals who are hired or appointed to represent that public agency, they need to be held to a higher standard than just the people in the general public. And they all know that when they take on the job. That's part of their indoctrination, if you will, for any elected official, no matter what department. Insofar as the budget, very tight, yes, but we also have to remember that living in Humboldt County, the cost of living is less than in other areas. So I've never been one to compare wages this area to other areas for raising that comparable wage up. I believe that, you know, with the cost of living, we don't need to be paid as much an hour. Now, obviously, there's mandates. When you're a public employee, you're going to get benefits. There's certain things that require money, and the taxpayers are going to have to fork over. But there's going to be budget cuts. I think, though, for me, with the Sheriff's Department, I've got a couple issues that I feel are really important that need to be looked at. One of them is when it comes to the filing of sheriff's reports. There's a lot of partiality when you're the person who is the author of a report. In other words, the sheriff comes out, does what he does on site, but once he leaves, it's all on him. You on site have no more control. Oftentimes you get reports that have been kind of crafted to sort of fit the agenda of the department or the officer. Especially if you're politically involved, then there may be a little bit more to it. What I would like to see with the Sheriff's Department is the consideration to get the deputies on what I guess what they're called is ear-mounted cameras, where once they become a part of a service call, that camera goes on and it stays on, and they're recording everything until they are through with being a part of what it is that they were a part of. That way you now have a file that can be attached to any report, so that if there is any question about, well, that's not what was said, or no, the officer, he's wrong on that, then go back to the tape, the uncut tape.
As far as political reform, obviously Ms. Duffy's stepping down after 2 terms voluntarily, but not everybody on the Board of Supervisors operates that way. Is a 2-term limit of the kind we see for the state legislature, the governor, the president, something you'd like to see? And then campaign finance, where you come down on campaign contribution caps or other reforms, given the abject failure of Measure T to accomplish anything.
Well, let's see. Campaign reform. Campaign finance reform. I believe I don't like the money in the politics. So either we need to get to all publicly funded, or you can only spend money privately on the candidate statement filing fee and signature in lieu fee, that sort of stuff, the technical paperwork stuff. Money equates to votes, and I don't think you'll get really many arguments from people that will admit that. As far as term limits, that's a real doozy, because you can look at it 2 different ways. You could look at it, well, if you have somebody in there that's just not really doing a good job, then you're getting them out. But what term limits does is it gives the voter another opportunity to be even more lazy on their vote. In other words, if voters don't vote right now, those that don't, and those that do, who don't really do their research and they just vote for that sign there, or reading an article to see, well, that person's got the most amount of money, or seeing a picture saying that candidate is the nicest dressed, or. If that's all that it's based on for the voters now, then what do you think term limits is going to do?